Hello, everyone, and welcome back to day 4 of KeyShot World 2020. I'm Derek Cicero, Vice President of Products and Strategy here at Luxion. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are. We actually looked yesterday, and we have folks from Japan, Hungary, Brazil, New Zealand, Kenya, all over the world watch this live stream, which is just fantastic because you definitely would not all fit in my office. Sorry, it's day 4. I had to mix up a little bit. Okay, thank you everyone again. You can follow on Zoom. You can follow on YouTube Live. Also, if you go to our home page, the Watch Live button pops up at 10 and noon. So if you're not on the agenda, you just kind of want to go to the home page, bam, you go there, you click Watch Live, and now you're here with me. In case you missed it yesterday, the wonderful folks at Dosh Design gave us 2.2 gigabytes of scenes and HDRIs. That's in the exclusive content section. So if you go on the agenda, you will see a section that says exclusive content. That's where you grab it. It's also where you get content for the day's presentation, if there is some. And today there is, which I'll talk about in a minute. Yesterday's presentations were great. Brad Edelman and Tim Fair from KeyShot Studios came in. If you don't know KeyShot Studios, it's a full service provider of KeyShot visualization, help, renderings, whatever you need. Go to keyshotstudios.com for more information. And they presented the concept of a digital twin. So really around the idea of single asset reuse and using that asset across everything from sales to marketing to production. So thank you to them for that presentation. The second presentation was by Will Gibbons, and that was Animation Essentials from Part to Material. One of the things that often happens is people say, how do I get started, with animation? I don't know where to begin. I've got it, but I haven't really played with it. Watch that video. It's a little over an hour. Will takes you from start to finish. He's so knowledgeable. If you want to know where to get started with animation, start there. We've got it for you. We set you up. If you want to know more about animation, tomorrow at 10 a.m., Ryan Levy is doing an advanced animation techniques class at 10 a.m. And that's going to go over things like how to animate fuzz, how to use the custom curve editor. So that's going to get a little deeper into that. So if you ever want to learn KeyShot animation, this is your chance. Watch Will's, come back for Ryan's tomorrow. You'll be off and running. Yesterday's prize winner was Matt M. He won the GoPro Hero 7 camera. So congratulations to Matt, and thank you to the fine folks at GoPro. Today's giveaway, which as you know by now is always in session 2 after the Q&A, is an RTX 5000 GPU. So if you want to win an RTX 5000 from the great folks at NVIDIA, today's your day. Thank you to the wonderful folks at NVIDIA. So we have 2 great presentations today. The first one coming up is KeyVR Best Practices in Workflow with Jesper Mosegaard, our Director of Products. The second one is Material Essentials, that'll be at noon with Ryan Levy. And I mentioned that there's exclusive content. If you go on the agenda page, you will see that there's content to follow along with Ryan's presentation today at noon. So before you go to that presentation, go to the agenda page, you download the content, you follow along, it'll be fun. So first presentation starting now, Jesper Mosegaard, Director of Products. KeyVR, he's been working on this for years. It's fantastic. If you ever want to go one click from KeyShot into VR, HTC, Oculus, Windows Mixed Reality, KeyVR is the solution for you. It's very simple. It's one click. He's going to talk about kind of why we built it, how it works. One of the things you may have noticed is a lot of the presenters earlier were talking about how more and more in the design process, they're being asked to present in VR or AR and really incorporate that into it. So if you've been curious about how that works, how you do that, today is a great presentation. He's also going to talk about KeyVR Connect, which is our multi-user support. You've been asking for that a lot, so you're going to learn about that. And a little sneak peek into some AR stuff that he has been working on. Very, very cool. Reminder, as always, hashtag KeyShotWorld. Please use it. Render contest still going on at Render Weekly. Really cool stuff. Check that out. Join in. You can use the Dosh Design, the free stuff that they gave to add to your renders. It's fantastic. Okay, so with all that said, let's get started with Jesper Mosegaard, KeyVR, Best Practices in Workflow. Jesper, take it away.
Thank you so much, Derek. And I trust that everyone can hear me loud and clear. I'm coming to you all the way from Denmark to talk about KeyVR. So I hope everyone here likes great images, at least at Luxion, and I know many of our users appreciate a great image. I mean, say that an image can tell you 1,000 different things. It can be used for products. You can just marvel at the quality of it. I mean, I personally very much like this particular image of a Ducati motorbike because I enjoy riding my motorbike, and I am trying to save up for this one in particular. A great image. We also enjoy animations, and it's always wonderful when an animation comes out in a nice, crisp, clear quality. Now, those are nice renderings, right? Well, every one of those were rendered in less than 10 milliseconds. So why is that, you may ask? Well, it's because for virtual reality, you need that 90 Hertz final frame quality to actually get the perceived quality of being in a room or next to an object, even though it's not really there. So in KeyShot, of course, we have the time for that image to settle. But when it comes to real-time virtual reality, we need to render it in less than 10 milliseconds. So this is what we see here. Now, I'm going to talk about KeyVR in specific and a bit about virtual reality in general. So in short, what is KeyVR? Well, it is virtual reality made easy. And I mean really easy. Easy the KeyShot way. It's meant to make you get insights into design much faster than if you had to wait for a physical prototype or if you merely had to look at an image, because virtual reality can really do something extra for you. Now, KeyVR was released last year in May 2019. We had a fall 2019 update, and we have an upcoming release coming soon, quote unquote. Now, what is the basics of VR actually? Well, it's all about having this head-mounted display. You put it on, and all of a sudden you're transported into a virtual world, something that doesn't exist but is purely digital, but it feels like you're right there in that world, right next to objects that you otherwise wouldn't see. It's also about walking around. So in virtual reality, you can actually walk around, so you can see the world or the object from different perspectives. It's also very much about interacting. So you would normally have controllers in your hands, and you would be able to use those controllers to actually manipulate the world around you so that you can, see an object from all the sides or move it around or maybe even throw it around a bit. So KeyVR is our one-click VR solution. So let me get a bit into what I mean when I say one-click. But what it really is a standalone application that can read KSP or BIP files that you may have created from KeyShot. It's also a shortcut from within KeyShot so that you can easily get into VR directly from the scene that you set up in KeyShot. It's also a custom VR renderer. So we have a lot of know-how and capability when it comes to accurate material synthesis or the rendering of images. And we've taken that knowledge and applied to VR rendering itself. We've done this instead of using game engines because, basically we tell each other all the time that we're not in the game of shooting our products. We're in the game of showing them at the highest quality that we can. So our custom VR rendering used in KeyVR is high frame rate, it's high material quality, and it's also a high degree of interaction. And I will come back to what this means, because interaction is just so important in virtual reality because it's important in real life. There are some system requirements here. It's a Windows application. We recommend a good graphics card. And of course, you need a virtual reality headset using the Steam VR or the Oculus Home application. Now, if you're running out of graphics memories, we do recommend some of the high-end NVIDIA Quadro graphics cards because you can get an incredible amount of memory to play around with. This way, you won't ever run out of memory for your geometry or your textures. So those are awesome. Now, of course, we also support many of the headsets out there. All of those that you can connect to your PC. So could be the Oculus Rift or Oculus Rift S through the Oculus desktop, or many of the headsets that connect to the Steam VR application. So the Valve Index, HTC Vive, also the Vario VH1 VR2, and of course, all the Windows mixed reality headsets out there. So I often get asked, which headset should you buy? Well, the main takeaway here is that you should try them yourself. But even so, I can give some general recommendations. I mean, the Vario VR headsets have an incredible quality in the center display, so those are very good for that. You do have to pay the price of a large number of pixels rendered. The HTC Vive Pro 2 has an overall great quality for professional use. The Valve Index has a 144 Hertz display, so that's butter smooth. It's like really being there in reality. But I think the one I like the best is the Oculus Rift S, because it's just very convenient to set up. There are no base stations to fiddle around with. So it's just the headset, and it does the tracking by looking out into the world. Now, I said it was one click. So what do I mean? So how easy is KeyVR? Well, we usually say that it's a 3-step process. So you need to prepare your scene in KeyShot, then you click KeyVR, and then you're in the experience. But let me show you what it means. Well, prepare the scene. For those of you familiar with KeyShot, you already know this. You drag and drop your CAD file into KeyShot. We can import anything, 30 different file formats at least. You have something up on screen immediately to look at, and then you can, from our library of materials, drag and drop new materials onto the different parts of your object, and you will end up getting something that looks good. Maybe you want to drag and drop an environment as well, just to see what the object would look like in a different environment or design for it. Now comes the tricky part. You need to click KeyVR. So notice down here, there's a button. I'm going to zoom in, click. That's it. Now you're ready to experience. So an application will launch when you go into the, when you click the KeyVR. And now you have a fully interactive rendering running. Now, currently it's running in desktop mode. So you will see there is a button over here. Currently, I didn't attach my VR headset. You can also see there's a whole UI component here where you can still control certain elements of the scene. We usually call this one the boss mode. So you may want to not give the controllers to the user and just guide them through the experience. But the important part comes next. You will take your headset, put it on, and all of a sudden you're transported into this world where you can actually see this drill. Now, this is where you actually have to try VR to really get the feel for the difference between viewing an image on the screen. Everyone here is viewing this on Zoom or YouTube, and it is still just an image on the screen. The important part here is that VR really gives you the impression that you are right there, right next to this object. So how do you then build experiences for virtual reality using KeyShot first to set up your scene and then click to go into VR? The way you can do this is to use some of the elements that are available to you in KeyShot. So as you import a model into KeyShot, they will become fill in the scene tree over here, and you can even have different sets of models. You have the model sets where you may want to play around with either variations of the object itself or maybe different kinds of objects in the same setting. So this is one of the things that you can set up in KeyShot, of course. And when you then go into KeyVR with the same scene, then I have two controllers. I can call up my menu, select switch model set, and now I will call up this additional menu, which shows me all the different model sets that were available to me in KeyShot, and they are also available here in KeyVR. So I can call up my chairs here, for example. I can turn it off again and get the next model. I can also do it a bit quicker than going into the menu. I can also just switch here on the trigger button of my controllers to go through the different objects or the different model sets. I can get some additional information by pointing at the object itself. So kind to what you got in the scene tree, so to know what object name, part name, and material is on it. And in KeyVR, you can play around with the physics of objects also. So this is one of the great interactive possibilities in VR. We also have this fine move widget tool where you can turn your object a bit more accurate and move it around a bit more accurate as well. Another very important thing, of course, in KeyShot is all about materials. So you could either use one from the material library, or you can design your own material by going all crazy with the sliders, and you can even set up multi-materials on a single part so that you can showcase different variations of color or finish that you may want to choose between as you're doing your design, or you may want to render out, of course, all the different variations here. This information, the multi-materials on the parts themselves, is also available in KeyVR. So this is now my first person perspective. I'm choosing switch material from my menu. And now as I'm holding my trigger button, I can choose between the different multi-materials to see what they would look like standing next to these very nice sculptures. I can also just click through the materials. I don't need to call up the menu. So there's an ease of use here as well. Environments is really the thing you want to play with if you want your object to really shine, right? So you want to make sure that it showcases the shape of the object. You want to make sure that it basically lights up the scene. And in KeyShot, of course, you can set up different environments. You can experiment with those, either because you want to find the right combination for your image, your digital photo, or maybe because you want to see your design in different environments. What would my design look like inside or outside? And this again is something we can also access when we are in virtual reality. So I'm going up close with these two beautiful, beautiful cars. I'm choosing the switch environment, and I can hold the button in to then choose between the environments you saw were accessible to me in KeyShot as well. Now, as I select through them, what I'm experiencing in VR is a huge difference between the different light environments and what the impact is on the shine of the material. I can even interact with the environment here and rotate it around a bit so that you can see how the environment, the light from the environment really plays on this paint of the cars. Finally, of course, one thing is to set up your scene, but in KeyShot, what you really want to do is to find the right vantage point to actually do a rendering. So where would it look nice to have set up a camera for this airplane? And I have to be honest, I'm not the best at finding any kind of views here, so I'm not sure this is a perfect one, to be honest. But when you go into VR, it's all of a sudden an entirely different thing. So one thing you can do is to go into the menu over here and just plainly select the cameras. It will match up with the renderings from KeyShot. But of course, the great thing about this, or the great experience, is to go into VR so that I'm actually there right next to this huge aircraft. It will snap on to the cameras themselves so that I can move around. I can see what it would look like to stand on either the wing or on the backside of an aircraft. I've never tried that in real life, of course, but all of a sudden in virtual reality, I can actually try it. The other nice thing is I can actually take screenshots. So that's another way for you to think about cameras. So I chose my screenshot tool, and now I can click away to get new images and new renderings in an entirely different way in virtual reality. Lastly, animations. I'm not going to show you guys how to set up animations in KeyShot. That has been done already, as Derek mentioned, but you can, of course, play back the animations in KeyVR as well. So this is fully dynamic. This is a SolidWorks motion study that is imported and then shown in KeyVR. Now, I want to give you some details about the techniques and I mean, the programming basically we did to get a program such as KeyVR up and running. So what are some of the design choices we've chosen basically? So of course, one of the very important things, and I would say a basis for getting anything up and running in virtual reality, given that you have a renderer as accurate as KeyShot is to match the material. So the perceived quality of the shape of your object once you apply the material here. So on the left side, you can see a rendering in KeyShot of our material ball, and on the right side, you see the similar rendering in KeyVR. So of course, a purely diffuse material is easy enough. So basically, yes, we can match up the colors of what you see in KeyShot. So you can basically trust that whatever color you select in KeyShot, you will get the same in KeyVR. But it also goes to the more fine-grained experience of what roughness did I select on, for example, a plastic in KeyShot. And it will show approximately the same appearance in KeyVR. We still have to, in KeyVR, of course, live under the limitation that we need to be done rendering in less than 10 milliseconds to hit that 90 hertz frame rate update in the VR headset. So it's not a one-to-one pixel accurate rendering, but it's good enough to actually trust the surface characteristics that you see and to actually begin to evaluate the roughness in this case, or maybe the mold tech that you applied. Now, of course, you can also go and do metals, and again, we get an approximate appearance. It's not as good as the plastic itself, but it's good enough to actually see that this is metal. We can also do glass. And so this used to be one of the difficult things to do in real-time rendering, where you need the final frame quality very fast. But we implemented a method to do this, and even to blend different glasses behind each other so that you still get the correct blended appearance of glass. We can even go to solid glass. So we can take into account the fact that that glass has a thickness, and this plays into the appearance of, for example, how blue it looks here where you go through more of the glass. Now you may see here that this is definitely not a one-to-one due to the limitations of rendering very fast, but it still gives you the impression of thickness of glass and also refractive effects, so that you can look through glass and you can see that it changes the appearance of whatever material is behind it. A very, very important part of rendering for VR is to give you a flicker-free appearance. Now I'm going to run this animation, and you will see on the right side here is a standard rendering that you would normally see in many game engines used for real-time rendering. But there's a lot of shimmering and flickering, which in itself is not bad or wrong, but in VR headsets, it gives you a bad impression or a bad feel, because especially in the peripheral vision, actually, when you get this flickering, you notice it a lot. So the peripheral vision is very sensitive to flickering. So we put in a lot of effort to make it flicker free. So on the left side, you see the actual rendering from KeyVR based on the same setting. You may wonder why I have a Ferrari with a lot of small bumps, but this is just to show you guys what one of the worst case scenarios of this flickering in appearance. And this goes with many of the design decisions we took as we developed this program, that we wanted to make sure that the image is always calm. So nothing that pops up or flickers, nothing that surprises your visual field of vision, because every time you notice something that looks a bit wrong, you're drawn out of this immersion that is otherwise the strength of virtual reality. Now, what about those polygons? As you know, all our graphics is all about tiny, tiny triangles in the end that we need to render. And if you have many polygons, you will get a lower performance. Also, if you're looking at a big model that fills your entire field of view and has a high poly count, you will get a lower frames per second. The problem is that if you have a low frame rate in VR, you will feel sick, or some people will feel sick, because there's a big difference between individuals when it comes to the amount of nausea you can get when you don't get that smooth frame rate, when you don't believe that you are in another room next to another object. So current virtual reality head-mounted displays will demand anything from 70 up to 144 hertz. And so the more polygons you have, the less fast it's gonna go when you're trying to render in KeyVR and in any program really that depends on the GPU for a rasterized image. So our recommendation is always to keep the polygon count as low as possible, but not lower than you need to. If I have to answer, I would say something like 2 to 3 million polygons is very nice. In any case, if you've dragged and dropped a CAD object into KeyShot, you almost always have the option to retessellate from within KeyShot. So you can take the description of the surface and you can get less amounts of triangles out of it, so that it is perhaps more suited for KeyVR, but also more suited for any kind of export you may want to do from within KeyShot. Now, even though I will say that 2 to 3 million polygons is very nice, well, you can easily go further than that. So this is one of our examples. It's a KTM motorbike. It has about 30 million triangles. It has 3,000 parts, 100 textures, and I'm rendering it on my NVIDIA RTX 2080 at a high resolution. I need to render 2 images, so one for each of your eyes, so that you get stereo vision. And I've set it up so that this is just below 90 hertz. I'm going to run the video now so that you can see it. And it runs just below 90 hertz. And on this particular virtual reality head-mounted display, it means that it will lock down to 45 frames a second, which is actually still okay because of the motion interpolation that is also done. You still get a very smooth experience as you're experiencing this in virtual reality. So you can definitely go high on the triangle count, but I would say experiment with it. If it's too slow or it's you feel that you get kind of sick in VR, then maybe go back in KeyShot, reduce the number of polygons if you need to work more with this particular model. So KeyVR really is situated within the KeyShot ecosystem. It is sometimes we call KeyShot a hub, because once you've prepared your scene in KeyShot, you can do so many things with it. You can, of course, render out images and animation. That's a given. You can also get out to web. We can do this whole configuration thing, and you can output to web, or you can output our XR images to web. Of course, you can export. You can also get into our free KeyShot viewer with the same scene that you prepared once. And of course, you can get into VR. So the benefit here is that there is no manual work involved once you've set up your scene in KeyShot. And most of the time, we've been told at least that it's fun to set it up. It's fun to play around with the materials and the lighting and all. And then it's single click to get into KeyVR, but also single click to get into so many other things. The major benefit here in just using KeyVR instead of exporting and maybe taking it into a game engine to do virtual reality is that all the materials just work, and we can guarantee that KeyVR is high performance. Now, why would you even use virtual reality? Well, it's all about really empowering the designs you can do. It's about empowering the decisions you can do around design. So let me give you a few examples here. So the one great thing that VR can do is to give you the feel of presence. So the feel of being immersed in an environment and trusting that it is real, that I'm actually touching this object, or I'm actually going out on this board and there's a long way down if I fall. That we can see from people using virtual reality that we've cheated the senses, and people really believe they are there, which means that you can make decisions that you would otherwise only be able to make if you actually had the product in your hand. That's a reason we do, clay models of design, or we do 3D print to see the design early on, or other kinds of prototype. And VR definitely fits into that pipeline. Part of that, of course, is to see it before it exists. This is what we've done for a long time, of course, with renderings, that we can actually parallelize, of course, the rendering of images while we're also producing the design or the object itself. But in virtual reality, you get the same, just that much more strong. So the fact that you actually touch the object before it exists, or you're standing right next to the house before it exists, gives you a strong impression of what it will be like when it's actually there, once it exists. You also get this true sense of scale. I mean, this is a huge piece of machinery we're looking at here, and that maybe I wouldn't have thought if I was only looking at an image. And I know you guys are, now you're just looking at a video feed of something that seems to be large, but when you're in VR, it is just like standing next to it. You get that sense of awe, that sense of, wow, this is a big thing, or whoa, this is pretty small thing. This is very important, the physicality of it. So we do have one problem in VR, is that we cannot touch the virtual object, not really. But the one thing we can, though, is that we can judge the size of things. So would my tool fit into the engine here? Would I be able to roll around my chair in this room? All of that can be tested in virtual reality as well. So just get your CAD model into KeyShot, click KeyVR, and you can begin making your experiments. Would I be able to reach this object from where I am now? Or maybe you can even scale your scene a bit, and you can ask yourself the question, if I was a child, could I then reach this object? Could I reach up to this shelf? So there's a lot of physicality that you can check, that you can design for in virtual reality, even though you cannot touch it. Finally, I mean, we humans are born with 2 eyes, and it gives us a lot of additional information from simply looking at a rendering. So a rendering can be a very nice, when looked at on the screen, can look incredible. But to really get the sense of what the shape and the material do together in a specific environment, you need your 2 eyes. You need to maybe move your head a bit around just to see how the light plays along the surface of your object. So this is one of the strengths, again, in VR. The last one here, I think, is maybe perhaps the most important one. So products are not products in isolation. Products are products in context. So consumers will go into a shop to buy the next drill. They will see them on the shelves, and they will make their purchase decision there. And part of that decision, of course, is, what is the appearance? How does it look compared to the competitors? Can I even see the objects I'm looking for? What's the appearance of them on the bottom shelf? Or even if you go all the way into designing the experience of going into a shop, you get so much more from the virtual reality experience than looking at the images, because in the end, going into a shop is a real experience where you walk around, you see with your 2 eyes, which again, VR can do for you. Now, this was a lot about what VR and KeyVR in specific can already do for you today. Now, in this next part, I want to reveal a bit of what we're working on at the moment. So Derek already alluded to the fact that we have something that we are programming on at the moment, designing at the moment, that we're calling KeyVR Connect. And this is a beta program right now, and if you guys are interested in it, please do reach out if you want to be part of the beta process itself. So wouldn't it be wonderful if you could get the VR experience across distance? So I could be in a virtual environment, and you could be in a virtual environment, and we can meet up. We can be right next to each other, or what seems to be right next to each other. We can talk about the design, we can discuss the design, we can discuss the different materials, we can discuss the different variations of the product. We can maybe see together what it would look like in different environments, inside, outside, on the shelf, and we can make those decisions as a group, or we can at least discuss them as a group, or maybe you can present the design that you made or the choices you wanna go for together in a group as well. Now, this is what we want to solve with KeyVR Connect. We want to connect KeyVR across the internet so that you guys can talk together. So you may notice now that we've introduced two new buttons, one that's called Host Session and one that's called Join Session. So I've loaded up a scene here, and I've already pressed Host Session on another machine connected far away. I've been given a session code so that I can now join the other people in VR by pressing the Join button and then entering the session code, and I'm going to press Connect. Now, as I press the Connect button, it will load for a minute, tell you we're connecting. Now I'm actually the third person entering this, and here we are. Two guys are already in there, and I think they're happy to see me. Yeah, they are happy to see me. Hi guys. So from there, we could then begin doing stuff together in virtual reality. So in this case, of course, we want to play around with some of the materials, and we want to play around with some of the objects that we've loaded in. And so let me take you to the next step. Now, here you see two different views. You can see the VR view from me down here, and we have the overview that where Jan, who's also developing on KeyVR, and me, we are both collaborating on, in this case, a bit of manual work, moving around the tires here, and then I'm moving the motorbike, and Jan wasn't quite satisfied, so he's moving it a bit as well. And now we can begin experimenting. So I want to switch out the materials, and yeah, it's blue. I like it, and I think Jan approves. Yeah, and I can try another one. I'm really happy about all colors, it seems, and yeah, Jan likes it as well. It's all is good. But then Jan is more interested in this gorgeous car over here. A lot of colors also to play around with, and basically this offers us the opportunity to talk about design, to change it, to see it, and to see it together, to reach a consensus, even though we're working across distances. So I'm happy, and Jan is happy, and we agree that we could always meet up at another time in KeyVR Connect. Now again, KeyVR Connect is in development right now. We're polishing up the last few details, and we are at a beta phase when it comes to KeyVR Connect, and we expect it to be included in the next update of KeyVR. There's a lot of work in progress, of course, and some of this may or may not come into the initial version, but just to give you guys an idea about some of the things we're considering. One thing, of course, is that you probably saw that we had this rather blank face on, this black blank face. And of course, this is just a canvas for a lot of interesting stuff you could do. Maybe you want to populate it with your own images. Maybe you want to see a live webcam broadcast here, and so lots of opportunities to do stuff with the avatars themselves. And actually, as an interesting point, the avatars themselves, including the hands, they are, of course, also just KeyShot files, so BIP files, in the install directory of KeyVR. So if you wanted to, you could just replace them and thereby brand your own experience of virtual reality or rendering in general for at interactive rates. The other thing we're working on, and this is supposed to show you, is that, okay, so it's all fine and good that you have hands in VR, but then oftentimes you want to use those hands to point to something, or maybe to describe something, or to annotate something. And so, of course, this is a lot of the stuff that we're looking into at the moment. How can we make it clear what the intent is when you just point and click, and that's the only thing you have? Of course, we would recommend that people also communicate over voice when they are in KeyVR. But there's also a lot of stuff we can do when it comes to the basics of interaction in VR. Now, I want to show you one last thing that I personally find very, very exciting. So virtual reality, of course, is being brought into a virtual world where you completely replace the environment that you are already in. But there's also another opportunity called augmented reality, where you simply overlay a bit of digital information on the real world. So we've done some experiments together with NVIDIA as part of their Cloud XR early access program. And so this is completely alpha version. It's not even beta, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. So Cloud XR. What is Cloud XR? Well, it's basically this intermediate step between a rendering on a PC using SteamVR for virtual reality and then a good graphics card. It's a connection between that and then a tablet running Android and specifically something called AR Core that allows the Android tablet to track the environment through the camera. So this is one way to give you the augmented reality without having some kind of headset on. Those headsets exist, but are still in the infancy and not really meant for I think production use yet. But tablets, they're nice. You can just take this tablet and multiple people can share it. And together with KeyVR Connect, this gives you the opportunity to join a session both from a VR perspective and also from an augmented reality perspective. So what would this look like? Well, we did an alpha version, of course. So first up, you're going to see what it looks like running the usual KeyVR application on my PC. So you'll notice that something funny is up with the background. This checkerboard is just to show you guys that we're rendering out the alpha map of this chair. So on the screen itself on the PC, nothing exciting is happening. The exciting part, of course, is that I took my tablet into our living room and I experienced this chair standing right there on the living room, and I can now all of a sudden make design decisions when it comes to how would this look next to my existing furniture. And personally, I think there is a lot of great experiences, great interactive products to still be made using this kind of augmented reality and the Cloud XR platform by NVIDIA. Also, I mean, I like cars, and oh boy, it would be nice if this car all of a sudden was standing there outside my doorway. I can experience it for now in augmented reality, but I mean, who knows? Anyway, it's a very nice car. And this is also part of what you can do with augmented reality. I have to be honest here, the Wi-Fi signal was a bit bad outside my house, so it was a bit of a challenge. And this is also why the car is not in my driveway. If I wanted to do that, of course, I would need to get on to 5G or something. With that said, that was what I wanted to present when it came to KeyVR. So the current use, the current best practices for workflow. And basically, I could have given this talk in a very short amount of time because it is all about clicking that button in your existing scene and you're there, you are in VR. But still, I like to show a lot of the images and the work that we put into it and also part of the future of KeyVR. With that, please come with your questions.
Well, thank you so much, Jesper. That was fantastic. One thing, if you don't mind, do you mind going back to your slides? Some folks came in a little later that were showing the different hardware that KeyVR currently works with. Some folks had questions on the different hardware that works currently, excuse me. One person's asking about the ability to export a 360 image from KeyShot and view it in a VR headset. That actually is a separate product that we have inside of KeyShot, the ability to basically kind of do a full kind of 360 rendering out that you could view. This is interactive is the kind of difference between what KeyShot used to be able to do and what KeyVR does today. One gentleman's asking about NVIDIA having the studio and the game drivers. Is there anything with regard to studio drivers versus game drivers and the performance in VR? Do you know anything about kind of how NVIDIA is optimizing those for things like VR?
So I know that NVIDIA are putting a great deal of effort into the studio drivers and also into the whole Quadro line of their GPUs to make sure that it works robustly at all points in time. But we also have great success with the game drivers and the gaming GPUs. They work marvelously well as well. So it's up to you. Try it.
One person's asking if objects can be snapped to each other. So as you're going through and obviously you're dropping things in a room, if it can sort of hit the floor or a collision detection and basic gravity. I don't recall if you had gone through that in the presentation.
So we don't as such have a snapping of objects. It's definitely a thing we're considering for future development. But the thing we do have though is that we have this physics system where you can throw around your objects and they will collide with the other objects, so that if you are taking your chair and throwing it around, it will land on the surface of the floor. So that's not really snapping, but it's still something that restricts the movements. And the other thing I showed was this fine move widget, which is our first step in giving a more accurate movement so that you can actually move in a plane or you can rotate only, because it's true, it is difficult to take the controllers and then moving things or lining things in VR.
And you obviously had showed kind of how the material and environment sort of menu that popped up in VR was customized. Can you speak a bit about how those options appear in VR?
Yes, so basically all the options you have in VR are derived from whatever you set up in KeyShot. So if you've set up multiple environments, you get those in KeyVR. If you've set up multi-materials and you point to the part where you want to change the material, then those are the options you get. So it's not customized as such, it's simply showing you what you already set up in the scene from within KeyShot.
Great. What are the plans to support USDZ and Apple AR-Kit?
So USD in itself is a file format that at one point you may want to be able to, or you might be able to export from KeyShot. USD is not required to get into KeyVR then. That's a direct connection between KeyShot and KeyVR. If you want to do augmented reality based on USD, then of course you want to end up in that file format. But we are working on also being able to bring to you augmented reality the easy way, where you don't need to export out.
Yes, I will say for folks that do want to do Apple AR-Kit, there are ways to essentially convert files directly to USD. So you can export from KeyShot, convert to USD, and then go to AR-Kit. So it'd be an extra step in there, but not natively today. And so one of the main questions people are asking is timelines. When could they potentially get on a beta? Can you speak to any specific timelines?
So, I mean, the beta we would be rolling out in the following weeks. So now is a very good time to get in touch, either with your sales representative or find a contact on the KeyShot website. So now would be a good time to get in touch.
Yes, and so I will also plug, if you're curious about trying VR, if you have the hardware and want to try KeyVR, you can contact your sales rep and they can set you up with a trial. And then and will the beta be released on the forum as our other betas have been, Jesper?
Oh, that decision has not been made yet. So I wouldn't say much about that yet.
Okay. And then some other questions coming in about the different Connect. Each person would need to have KeyVR. So there is not a way to kind of have one person be the host and the other one sort of have a free viewer. Everyone who is connected inside of KeyVR would need the full KeyVR install, correct?
That is absolutely correct. But actually, it's yeah, I know you need one KeyVR for everyone who needs to connect. But the nice thing here is that you actually don't need the headset or the virtual reality equipment to connect. So what I did for a lot of the recording, we did because we were at home, and Jan and I connected over VPN, and then we did the whole video recording. And one of the machines, so my laptop basically, was a quote-unquote cameraman that just connected without having the virtual reality headset. And he was also a participant in the virtual reality scene. So you can also see it even if you don't have the virtual reality equipment. You can just enter with a regular PC with you need a good graphics card, but still you can enter. Then you can see the scene. And I mean, if you call up, you can have a voice chat as well with the other ones.
That's great. One question is regarding the triangle allocation, and if you have hidden model sets and materials in the scene, does that count as part of the allocation of the triangles?
It does not count towards what can degrade performance. It does not. And the other thing is also, if you don't look at the object itself, it will also not slow down any kind of performance. So you can still have, and I've seen some of our users do these huge environments, like a big room full of machinery that can have a lot of polygons, and it still runs smooth because you don't look at the whole room at the same time. I mean, you have a limited field of view. That said, of course, you can run out of memory, but that's where you want a big graphics card with a lot of memory on the GPU.
Is there a roadmap for which materials and textures are currently not supported and when they will be supported for kind of complete parity between KeyShot and KeyVR?
So on our manual pages for KeyVR, we have listed the appearance of all the different kinds of materials you can set up right now in KeyVR and what you would expect to get when it comes to comparing it with a KeyShot. Some of the things that we're working on right now is to support the full extent of, for example, the procedural materials or advanced material graphs, because you might imagine if you've set up an advanced material graph, we don't want to execute that material graph for every material, for every frame of a virtual reality experience. So part of what we're working on that I didn't showcase today is to essentially bake that information into a more like a small representation of what that material would look like if you combine the entire material graph and procedural materials into simply a texture, essentially, or set of textures that represent the material appearance. So we are working on that at the moment, and it will come in a future release of KeyVR.
Great. Someone's asking about support for PNG labels. I'm not sure if the question is specific to inserting labels inside of KeyVR or what label support comes from KeyShot over into KeyVR.
So PNG as a file format is definitely supported both in KeyShot and KeyVR. The question is probably on a more specific experience, trying to apply it as a label with maybe some material on it. And there are limitations to what we can do there. Currently, we don't support the labels explicitly. You would need to convert them into either the diffuse channel or somewhere else, and you can use the same mapping. But it is definitely one of the things that is on our roadmap, because we know that people want the exact same appearance of both labels and procedurals and material graph in KeyVR as well.
Great. One gentleman's asking if existing renders can be converted to a VR experience. I assume what they're asking is kind of the ability to take any KeyShot file and bring it into KeyVR, and the answer is anything can go in there, but obviously depending on how you set that up and what materials you have, certain things may not be supported.
So one of the things, maybe to just say one more thing on that one that I've seen come up a lot, is that you've done this beautiful rendering in KeyShot, then you press the KeyVR button, and you're wondering why you cannot see your object. And in many cases, it's because you were not careful about the size of the object itself. So in VR, size matters, right? It matters if it's a meter big or a centimeter big or a millimeter big. And so this is one of the things where you actually need to just revisit maybe your scene before bringing it into VR.
Great. One person's asking how, and I think you showed a bit of kind of animation, but if you wanted to sort of have the hood of the car open, how that would work in KeyVR.
So it's simple. You would just animate the hood of the car in KeyShot. If you animate the hood of the car in KeyShot, and there's been a number of talks about how you can apply animations, when you press the play button in KeyVR, the hood goes up and down. Now, there is one limitation that's also inherent to KeyShot itself, is that we don't yet have multiple animations that you can choose between. This is also one of the things that we've been asked a lot about for our roadmap, is that wouldn't it be nice if I could open the hood of the car and also the doors of the car and do it independently? What you can do, by the way, just to give an answer on in the short term, is you can simply set up 2 model sets with where the animation is applied to each of those. And within KeyVR, you could then choose one model set when you want to see what the hood of the car would look like, and the other model set when you want to see the doors.
Wonderful. And then is there currently limitation to the number of simultaneous connections for KeyVR Connect?
So we've tried to design it to accommodate a large number of connected clients. And to be honest, we have not stress tested it yet. So we don't actually know what will happen if you're 100 people in there, but we do know it's definitely gonna accommodate what would normally be a design group looking at some kind of design or object together.
Wonderful. Any plans for haptic feedback?
Oh, haptic feedback would be nice. I think we would definitely want to do it once there is a commercially viable product that does give you haptic feedback. So there are a lot of tech prototypes out there by hardware manufacturers of VR, incredible ones where it seems like you can almost touch it with the individual fingers, and you can get the haptic feedback on each of the fingers. But again, to be honest, there is no commercially available product that has wide support yet. Once it seems that there is one that's close, we will jump on it immediately.
Wonderful. Well, we're coming to the top of the hour now. I think our questions are mostly resolved. Thank you so much, Jesper. One of the things we mentioned is for folks who have additional questions, or I mean, obviously with regard to specific scene sizes and performance and hardware and all of that stuff, we have a forum. There's a KeyVR forum on our forum board. So we definitely would encourage people who have additional questions and kind of want additional feedback to go on our forum board. Jesper, Jan, a lot of the developers are on there answering questions, as well as the support team. So that's a great place to get more information. Again, if you're curious about trying KeyVR, please go to your sales rep, and they can definitely help you out and get you set up on a trial version of it. I want to thank Jesper again for coming today. Reminder, our second session today, Materials Essentials, Interface and Usage with Ryan Levy, will be at noon today. So for folks who want to learn more about materials, you can do that. And reminder, there is some content you can download to follow along. Jesper, any parting words for us here?
I just say, you know, as long as everyone needs to be inside, get into VR and experience.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you in about an hour here at noon time Pacific. Thank you so much.